I'm going to also notice insistence to drive my entire life in very narrow circle of my family members and a couple of friends I have acquired. Although my entire life I have tried to move on, simply it did not happen. I literally became imprisoned and thrown back to the subject from which I actually decided to run away and have sacrificed a lot to run away from, including the country and the people. But all of this time I have been held back and I could have not moved for an inch, neither to acquire no one single new friend, and thrown in the memories of the past and analyzing over and over and over everything based on the memories of past, and it is exhausting, but also reminds me to suggest to me that it is in question some kind of mechanism of farm, and that someone is actually holding that farm, and that is why you have this limited contacts, because someone is actually holding us in the protocol of farm. That is, I have to understand now how monarchical protocol, especially when it is a question more important subject, would look like, as a matter of guarding the entire event in much more controllable conditions. This is very much slavery level, and I'm not going to associate it with black skin. I'm associating it with monarchy protocol. I have never understood that protocol as such, and I will never understand it as such. My concept of monarchy must be profoundly ancient at earlier of the times, when connect to the goddess of absolute justice, and the way how in ancient times people would see societies much more um, as a protocol human driven concept, rather than what later in the process became very much business affair. At some point it became business affair. I think at point of Jesus it became business affair, where people established ways, where people recognized that leaders can be used as a way of controlling population. Once they established that, I'm going to assume slavery started intensively to become this level of modern approach. Of course, slavery existed in previous times as well. It was much more associated to way how someone would relate to different to foreigners, to foreign territories. Today we find it as economic unit, and as such becoming very much spread across the population. And here the population itself become submitted to this kind of economic trade-outs. And the logic stopped being political, the logic became economical. The subject stopped being political, it became economic. That's the point where I claim we started to lose humanity and everything that humanity should be about. England, I am saying that there is a system in your societies that is creating, that is recruiting little kids from little age and transforming them into rotten children. And that is very much done within the and by the monarchical circles. There is a movie that very properly explains something like that going on, in the movie being called Dangerous Liaisons, showing the real true face of aristocracy. Look at the movie Dangerous Liaisons. In any case scenario, I am talking here about case of trapping kids as a little kid, recruiting kids as a little especially among the immigrants, and using them and brainwashing these kids from little age to go ways that later on, upon which they can be compromised or used and threatened to become slaves, and to implement also to be used for all of the dirty affairs. In such way, you disable. Especially we are talking about Jesus bloodline. So the special target, and that is why Jewish come here in first place. Special target since times of Jesus became Jesus bloodline itself. Today, usually the entire entertainment industry is in that category of Jesus bloodline. Basically, it is, we are not talking just of entertainment industry. We are talking actually about the initial ancient deities of ancient Macedonia associated to performance, to cast. That's why castle is actually associated to casting or amphitheater. Ancient theaters, reference to ancient theaters is at earlier times would have been also very much philosophical places. That is where philosophy is being born. It is being born. That is where intelligence is being born. And that is how Jesus become what he has become. And today we have a philosophy within all of the school of ancient characters. Something here is not clearly explained, and that is especially what is going on here in repetitive motion in the protocol Jesus bloodline. You cannot talk here about prostitutes and Tut, or going directly in reference to Tutankhamun and pyramids of Egypt. We are talking also about pyramids of Egypt here. Pyramids of Egypt. England will need to explain pyramids of Egypt. England will need to explain the protocol Jesus bloodline. England will need to explain expansion of 80s, of pop music. England will need to explain enormous rottenness that is among these talented kids that become sexual predators and become victims to sexual predatory. And all of that is embodied in aristocracy, especially still very much heavy weighted in England. So main problem continue to be splitting the planet and the humanity on wolves and sheep. And the concept of satellites and technology allows that to happen. In this game, no one helps. No one wins. The wolves become decadent, and they are being treated like dogs. Sheep is victimized. No one wins. In that game, no one wins. Both sides end up being devastated. I established that there would be therefore owners of the herd, therefore, that would be the real benefactors, the ones that are owing the herd. And that is where we find monarchy. I have to therefore make clear that my definition of monarchy is completely different from that definition of monarchy, where here human on level of irresponsible and wealth generation just for itself, monarchy step up as some kind of god protocol versus the rest of humanity. And I simply cannot find this acceptable. it was happening, obviously, it was going on like this for 2 millenniums. However, for quite some time we live modern age, and treating people like that, using technology, using satellites to monitor people, to call them prostitutes, to go into their private lives, to manipulate their lives and extract their wealth. I can't see that there's a way of going into the future, especially when it is in question trapped actual intelligence, when what is ship is actual human and actual concept of intelligent living, intelligence, and everything that builds above are actually obsolete definition of empowering, which was by the methods of collecting wealth and physical power. It's all based on physical power and generated wealth, but it is not where we find human. It is not where we today find human. That system, therefore, cannot be supporting protocol human anymore. In substance, it has become working exactly against human instead. Monitoring how far the present affairs are evidently a result of outside intervention when it comes to influencing families, kids from young age, recruiting them in various collective outside driven platforms. It would question how far the entire previous century's polarization of territories was a result of actual driver by family members, or the families have been actually products of outside world playing the game and using them as a horses, and reflecting therefore in the entire history making rather collective ground affairs reflected via the performance of family members, rather than assuming that the family members were the actual decision makers or first-hand decision makers and first-hand executors, first-hand players of their history. So I'm not saying this very much. The war that was happening in Europe, for example, I'm not saying very much driven by the disagreements and inner conflict of families and family members, as much as I'm going to say family members being manipulated by a very strong present, very strongly present, very strongly active outside elements, ended up in a process to use families as a matter of their aspirations and their ongoing manipulative affairs and ongoing intentions to reach the power, to get to the power and influence direction of the family decision making on larger scale. So obviously there would be strongly present international factors as well. Again, it brings you to conclusion that the game was never ever that much on the level of families, of the monarchy families, as much as they have always been some representing some kind of playground via which the various national and even much more international factors would be playing the game on the field, and they would end up literally being the horses. Literally, we find the entire situation positioned within some kind of parameters of chess table. Now that would be latest development, latest historic development that still is taking place on the planet as we speak, majorly present through the entire period of Renaissance. What are the real roots of that entire history of organization of our societies? That is another question. And how that organization of our societies was changing within times. That is something we still need to talk more to do more of research and to admit to history with much more analytical approach and much more comprehensive approach than that everything looking as in a story tale for kids. In a story tale for kids. We talk therefore about much more serious forces, much more serious influences that are navigating the game field, including the war field of certain territories, and that everything in a certain moment of time appears as some kind of much more larger region generated event, although on surface would not look like that. So normally my first question was always normally put yourself on test. If you find yourself, for example, that you have enough conceptual ground to contact some of the monarchies and to ask for some kind of support, or even to give you space within the protocol to bring your work. Would you think that it is all up to them? If it is in question some kind of risky situation as well, risky circumstances, as for example, stupid long-term political polarization, would you not find that risky for all of the reasons that are outside family corridors? Would you not find at very soon, at a very beginning, that nothing actually would be that much in hands of that family, but much more in about the circumstances that are surrounding that family, and that these circumstances can very easily make out of these family members a weapon. They can use them, and if the family members are not strong enough to resist various influences, they cannot be entrusted, and they can hardly be called individuals as well. That you can make any negotiation with, because you cannot rely on their independent status. If they do not have independent status, you can hardly assume that there is anyone attending the protocol. And basically you find yourself in a game field without the attendees. The question of independent status of protocol attendees is critical here. If they do not have independent status, you technically do not have protocol, neither can be used by any active member of society, because it cannot be a reliable event. So everything is much more theater that exists heavily defined within its own circles, like enormous mechanism that does not exist on its own parameters. It would be foolish. People out there would think that monarchy family, for example, of England, is completely wasted power in the family members of that family. That is absurd. Of course, it's going to become a question of circles. And what circles, what structures are actually holding that power center that then end up being called monarchy of England? And take reference to entire English history, to the present times, and the entire playground that comes with that territory, and the entire influences that come with that. It is a power center. Yet who is controlling it versus how it should be managed is a question of the times. Of present time, our question is beyond functioning of England. Our question of present time is functioning of this entire planet. We don't have time to waste. If you can spell word planet, well then you play word planet as well. It's not there just to spell it out. That become matter of liability and matter of responsibility. Excuse me, at what point we are going to exercise that responsibility and that liability as a planet? At what point exactly that is going to happen? That's your question of today, and you still can't answer it. And don't give me your personal buzzing around like little insects. No one have time for your little insect chatting. How you're going to exercise planetary management and is your question of today, and you do not know how to answer it. You don't have answer to that question. Many thinking we are better off is if we leave planet unattended. That answer is wrong answer. That answer is wrong answer. Can you provide correct answer, please, to a given question? You will notice how far this world is much more polarized than initially looked like. Much more polarized, and we don't need extraterrestrials to land. It appears as they already landed for quite some time.